Welcome to MATCH B2B Insights. I'm Benny Fluman, and this show is really about one thing: how B2B companies build revenue systems that actually work in the real world, not just on a slide. And before we get into today's topic, let me introduce the two people joining me: Dafna Cohen and Nadav Berkovich. Dafna works at the intersection of strategy, positioning, and growth, and Nadav brings a very sharp revenue and sales execution lens. Great to have both of you here.
Hi, great to be here. We usually talk to companies in cybersecurity, SaaS, and other complex B2B markets where growth is not just about getting leads. It's about building the structure behind the growth so deals can actually move.
Yeah, because activity is not the same as progress. You can have demos, follow-ups, a Slack channel called Big Opportunities. Everybody feels busy and still nothing closes, which honestly is the favorite sport of many B2B teams.
Especially in cyber. And to be clear, this isn't only a cyber problem, but cyber makes it louder. The pattern is familiar. The deal looks alive, people are replying, meetings happened, maybe even a POC started, but momentum just disappears. In many cyber motions, the cycle stretches 2 or 3 times longer than it should after the first real interest. Nobody says no. Nobody says yes. The deal enters that beautiful corporate parking lot and never comes back.
And the key point for today is that this usually is not a product problem. Companies often think maybe the pitch was weak, maybe the demo missed something. Sometimes, sure, but very often the real issue is that the deal never organized itself inside the buyer's company.
Right. You're not selling into one brain. You're selling into an internal system with competing priorities, different risk thresholds, and people who really do not want to own a bad decision. That's where deals slow down.
So, this episode is about why cybersecurity sales cycles drag on after initial interest and what actually moves them forward. If episode 3 was about building pipeline, this one is about why pipeline does not automatically become revenue.
I think this distinction matters a lot. Technical interest is not the same as organizational commitment. A buyer can be genuinely interested. They can love the product. They can ask smart questions. That still does not mean the company is moving toward a decision.
Yes. I see teams confuse a good champion with a real deal all the time. One person joins 3 calls, asks for pricing, even pushes for a demo, and everyone says, great, we're in process. Maybe. Or maybe you're just in a conversation with one motivated person who can't carry the decision alone.
That's a big difference. A real deal starts when there is movement inside the buyer organization, not only movement between you and one contact. If legal is not aware, if IT hasn't looked at integration, if budget ownership is fuzzy, then you're not late stage. You're early and maybe not even that.
Exactly. And it can feel misleading because the interaction is positive. People mistake responsiveness for progress, but a responsive prospect is not the same as an aligned buying group.
I sometimes ask sales teams a very simple question. Besides your champion, who else has entered the conversation? If the answer is, well, not yet, but they said their team is interested, that's usually a warning sign. Interest is nice. Internal coordination is what closes deals.
And that's where a lot of pipeline gets overestimated. It looks healthy in CRM because there are notes, calls, next steps. But structurally, the buyer has not committed to doing the hard internal work required to buy. In cyber, that gap is brutal.
Cybersecurity deals are complicated because there usually isn't one clean decision maker. You may start with a CISO or someone in SecOps. Then IT gets involved because of integration. Then legal appeals because of data exposure and liability. Then procurement joins, and suddenly the energy in the room drops by 40%.
Minimum.
And each stakeholder is evaluating something different. The CISO may care about risk reduction. SecOps may care about operational load and whether this creates more alerts than value. IT is thinking integration and maintenance. Legal is thinking responsibility and exposure. Procurement is thinking cost, terms, and leverage.
And nobody wants to be the person who approved the tool that creates headaches 6 months later. That's the real thing. The buyer is not just buying software. They're accepting risk, workload, and political ownership.
That's why I push back when people say, but they loved the demo. Fine. The demo is one moment. The deal gets decided in the buyer's internal discussions you don't see. If those discussions do not produce alignment, the deal freezes.
Yes, and when there is no clear internal owner, it gets even worse. Everyone is sort of interested, which usually means nobody is accountable. In that state, the safest organizational decision is delay.
Delay is the most popular decision in cybersecurity buying. It's not a rejection, so nobody feels bad. It's not approval, so nobody takes risk. It's corporate yoga. Everybody stretches, nobody moves.
Terrible analogy. Accurate analogy.
Very accurate. So when deals get stuck, it's often because the seller solved for technical validation, but did not help the buyer solve for organizational justification.
Let's make this practical. Where do these deals usually stall? First, right after the demo. The buyer says, "This looks interesting, send materials." Translation, "We are not yet ready to carry this internally."
Second, after the POC. This is painful because the team thinks, we proved it works. Yeah, but proving the product works is not the same as proving the company should buy it now.
Then, during integration review, suddenly technical dependencies appear. Implementation ownership is unclear, and what looked like a product evaluation becomes an operational burden discussion.
And then procurement, of course. Procurement is where weak deals go to become very quiet.
Or to die politely over 14 emails.
The early warning signs are usually visible before that. 1. No additional stakeholders are joining. 2. The conversation stays purely technical for too long. 3. There is no real implementation discussion. Not rough timing, not ownership, not what happens after signature. 4. Urgency is vague. The problem is important, but somehow not important enough for this quarter. And here is a simple self-check. How many of your current deals have more than 2 stakeholders in the room? How many have reached implementation discussion? How many have been sitting after a POC with no next business step? If you do not know those numbers, you are not diagnosing the pipeline, you are guessing at it.
Those are signs of motion without progress. You have calls, but no widening of the buying group. You have curiosity, but no internal commitment. You have next steps, but not decision steps.
Exactly. I mean, a calendar invite is not a buying signal. Sometimes it's just proof that people are very good at scheduling meetings.
What moves deals forward is helping the buyer make sense of the decision internally. That starts by connecting your solution to a real business pain, not just a technical feature set. What breaks if they do nothing? What risk stays exposed? What operational cost continues? And let's be blunt, if your deal depends on one champion, you do not have a deal. If nobody is discussing implementation, you are not late stage. You are still proving the case.
And you need language that works beyond the technical user. Your champion may understand the architecture, fine, but can they explain the business case to leadership, to legal, to procurement? If not, the deal depends on you being in every room, and you won't be.
This is where sales teams often overuse follow-up and underuse enablement. Another checking in email is not strategy. Helping the buyer build an internal case, that's strategy. Give them the framing, give them the rollout logic, help them explain why now, why this, why the risk is manageable.
And create stakeholder alignment early. Ask directly who else needs to be involved. Ask what implementation would require. Ask what internal approval path looks like. These are not annoying questions. They're deal questions.
Also, be honest about friction. Cyber buyers appreciate clarity. If integration will require work, say so and help structure it. If procurement will ask hard questions, prepare for that. Confidence comes from reducing uncertainty, not pretending uncertainty doesn't exist.
Yeah. AI won't save a weak deal, automation won't save a weak deal, and a fancy deck definitely won't save a weak deal. Internal momentum saves deals. When the buyer starts doing work on their side, now you have something real.
So the real lesson is simple. The work does not end when the meeting is booked. Honestly, in many cases, that's where the real work starts.
Deal is not progressing because one person likes your product. It is progressing when the buyer organization begins moving toward a decision together. That's the shift sellers need to watch for.
And if that movement is not happening, don't comfort yourself with activity. Diagnose it. Are we stuck in technical interest? Is there a clear owner? Is there urgency? Has the buying group expanded? If not, the pipeline entry may be real in CRM, but not real in revenue terms. So ask yourself, is this deal actually advancing, or are we just adding calls? Are we building organizational commitment or just collecting polite replies? Those are very different things.
That's the bridge from episode 3 to this one. Pipeline matters, of course, but pipeline is only valuable if it converts. In cybersecurity, deals don't close because the product is better. They close when the organization is ready to take the risk.
If this is what you're dealing with right now, stalled opportunities, long sales cycles, good meetings that go nowhere, this is exactly the kind of problem worth unpacking structurally.
So if this sounds familiar and you have real opportunities stuck after demos, after POCs, or at the internal approval stage, reach out and book a short conversation with us. We can look at your current deal motion and see where it's slowing down in this market.
Thanks for listening to MATCH B2B Insights. Dafna, Nadav, great as always.
Thanks, Benny. See you next time.
Thanks both. Bye, everyone.